How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today we are looking at the top medium tanks on World of Tanks console. We're going to have a look at them, go through which ones, why I've chosen them, and then give a few honourable mentions right at the end. I think we'll just get straight into it. Obviously, we don't want to faff around too much, and our starting tank will be the FV4202. This is the other British medium tank. Obviously there's the Centurion Action X is the its counterpart. Basically the FV4202 is a better version of the Action X, if I'm going to be completely honest. Has more armour, or I should say more effective armour, considering it kind of gets this really low profile hull, which actually when you angle it and have some really high angles, basically you're going to be able to actually bounce some shots, that of which cannot really be said for the Action X because it's so boxy and it's not really got any armour, and it certainly isn't as well angled as the FV4202. So when you come around a corner in the FV4202, you know, you can have some really nice angles that people are just going to more than likely just bounce off of. Yeah, really good tank. Gun on this thing is absolutely ridiculous. It actually, just the DPM is really good, and since it got a speed buff from 45 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour, makes the tank far more comparable to the Action X, and actually this thing can definitely overpower the Action X in almost every single situation. I think when we look at the actual rate of fire of the tanks, they're the exact same. You're looking at the vision range, they're literally the exact same as well. The only problem that I guess that the FV4202 has, but also is a benefit, is that it gets HESH rounds as its premium round, so you don't actually get the high penetration, as you'll see in the top right corner of the screen. On the Action X you'll get 330 heat pen, I believe, whereas on the FV4202 you'll only get 210 HESH pen. It does mean that you can get those really nice HESH damage shots where you get doing 480 instead of the 390 that the Action X gets. Obviously, if you want to do the same amount of damage, you can fire HE in the Action X, but it's not really the same effect, and you certainly won't be able to pen anyone that you come up against with HE at the same tier, really, unless you get the backside of their tank. Now, obviously, the HESH pen, that's actually kind of a negative, but also a really good positive, because often the lower tier tanks that you come up against, you will have enough pen to be able to go through them, and so, you know, it's very easy for you to do that, as long as you know the weak point of the tank, and if you make sure that you know where you're aiming, this tank will basically be super high DPM for you. And yeah, I've found it an absolute treat to play so far. I've only played something like 50 games maybe in the FV4202. I did 3 mark the Action X, and I'm hoping to do the exact same with the FV. We've played 72 games, I should even say. Average damage 3,741 in the FV4202. So, you know, good tank, really strong, and certainly one of the best mediums in the game. Moving on, we do have the TVP T5051. Now, this is a very nice tank to play, and certainly one that I don't actually see played in game. I guess it's kind of because the novelty's worn off with regards to the autoloader that this tank gets. But I think a lot of people underestimate just how good this tank can be. Obviously there's a counterpart in the game being the Machine, which is very similar, has a better gun, but the TVP can rack up so much damage so quick, and I've been playing it recently, trying to 3-mark it. I'm very close now, but basically this tank is really good. The 100mm gun, 320 alpha, but you do get 4 shots in a clip. The clip takes about 20 seconds to reload, so it's fairly quick, and you've got around 3,600 DPM with the autoloader, maybe just a little bit under because obviously the intra-clip. But we should mention that the intra-clip reload of the TVP is super low at only 1.71 seconds, so by the time you fire the first shot and the time that you hit your last shot is only going to be like, what, 5 seconds, and you'll have dealt 1,200 damage, or just over that even, I should say. So yeah, a fantastic gun, and this thing, it really does make the tank. You'll also note that the standard rounds on the TVP are actually APCR, so they're really quick to hit the target, and often what you can do is you can hit targets at range really easily. So if you're coming up against light tanks and any other mediums that might be going quite fast, this tank is really good at taking those out, because you don't have to lead your shots as easily. The rounds hit very quickly, and you can actually aim for weak spots a lot easier. So I've found that you can actually go for a lot of tracking damage with the TVP, considering you can hit their track once, they'll repair it instantly, almost every time pretty much, and then you hit it again, which detracks them permanently, and then you can hit your other 2 shots very nicely into them. And I've found that I've been getting 3,000 assistance damage if we take into account its good view range as well, which we haven't mentioned. With the boost of having coated optics and ventilation and a good crew, we've managed to get up to 478 meters, which means that you can outspot a lot of light tanks. And often, if you're using it correctly to just poke hills, you can get a lot of spotting damage, and that's another feature of the TVP. Obviously, I've got a skin on it, so it doesn't actually look like this. Without the skin, it looks a little bit less interesting. But certainly, this is what it looks like normally. Really nice tank to play, and certainly one I'd recommend for people that like autoloaders as well. However, should be noted, if you haven't played autoloaders, this probably isn't the tank you want to be going towards first as your first medium tank in the game. And number 3, it wouldn't be a best medium tanks in the game if it didn't feature the Object 430U. This tank is basically just broken. It really is broken, and considering we've got the accuracy buffs and all of the various different things on console, it's still relevant for PC because it is just that good. But yeah, this tank just became super overpowered. Armor model of the tank basically gives it armor for a medium tank, which is not fun for those of you who come up against it. If you're in a same tier medium, you actually find it a little bit difficult to pen it if it's angling well. And I certainly really do not like fighting the Object 430U. The turret is actually fairly strong, and if you're playing against it, it can be really annoying. Obviously, if you're in a high alpha TD with high penetration, you can more than likely go through the front of it. Obviously through the upper plate is quite easy if you've got that high penetration, but on a lot of tanks it's actually quite annoying to go up against this tank. Obviously the lower plate is the weak point, but if you get hold down or you just angle a lot and you side scrape in this thing, which you can do, it makes it very difficult for your opponents. And considering the gun that this thing gets 440 alpha on a medium tank, yes that's right, 440 base alpha damage, yeah, absolutely crazy. And if you get into the right position fighting against opposite medium tanks and making sure that either you only come out to fight against those medium tanks one-on-one where you just take one shot, obviously you're going to outtrade them a lot more than they're going to actually deal damage to you, because you just have that like extra 50 damage on top of the British ones. And if you're fighting other Russian mediums, you do have like 120 more alpha damage than they do. Obviously they get the DPM, but this tank really doesn't suffer too much because, they may have more DPM, but if it's not effective DPM where they can pull around a corner and shoot twice for every time you shoot once, then it doesn't really make it that much more effective. So, making sure that you use this as kind of like an opportunistic medium where you pull around a corner, you put one shot into them and then get back away is also something that I'd keep an eye on. The view range isn't the best, 400 meters. You ain't going to be really spotting that much unless you are brawling up close. So, that's the kind of playstyle that this tank features, and it's a really good starting medium tank for those of you to go down. If you haven't really played medium tanks, you've been focusing on heavy tanks, then certainly using this one will be of great importance to you. And yeah, really interesting tank to play, and I would 100% recommend anyone on the game to basically pick up the Object 430U. I'm very close to being able to pick it up myself. I have played it before on other accounts, but I don't currently have it on my main account. So yeah, really good tank, and yeah, I'm pretty sure most of you will know how frustrating it is to come up against one of these things in game. Coming in at number 4, we do have the Batchat 25T. Now, this is a well-known medium tank within the World of Tanks community. It's super good, and It's only really got better with update 6.0 on console and the crew skills and stuff like that in the game. Obviously, you start off with 100 mil, which is pretty terrible, I'm not going to lie. Then you get a 105. When you get this 105, it becomes an absolute machine. You've got 390 alpha damage. I think you get 6 in the clip. Yeah, this thing is just unbelievably good in the game. And I would 100%, for those of you who haven't played any autoloaders, the Batchat is probably the one you want to get first. Yeah, it's just an amazing tank, and one that goes really, really fast, 65 kilometers an hour top speed, 1800 hit points, which isn't the highest, but it's a tank that doesn't focus on its hit points. You want to be using its vision range, you want to get into positions where you're going to be able to use that effective DPM that this tank gets as well, that really high clip potential where you pull up, you deal your damage, and then you bugger off and get away as fast as possible. Once you've done that, obviously you reload, get into cover, find yourself into a position where you're going to be advantaged when you reload, so you can just pop out again. And that's the key thing with autoloaders, is obviously dealing your damage, moving to get safe, but putting yourself in a position where once you're ready, you can come out of that safe position to deal more damage as soon as possible. Obviously, autoloaders DPM is slightly skewed, so although the DPM might be poor on paper, you've got really good effective DPM where, you know, when you come into an engagement with an enemy tank, you will be dealing multiple shots of damage to them every time that you meet them, or at least if you put yourself in the right position for that. Yeah, I think that for those of you who don't know what the Batchat is, it's definitely a tank that you should be looking at and going towards. The line leading up to it is actually really, really fun. I personally went the light tank route to be able to get it, the Batchat 12T. You can go in the form of like the heavy tanks, but I wouldn't recommend it, and I'd actually personally go the ELC AMX. This tank, then you've got all of the French light tanks, which are really fun, and you can get other tier 10s from it, so I'd recommend doing that if it was up to me personally. And the final tank on our list is the CS63. This is the Polish medium at tier 10. This one is basically one that features that brand new gas turbine engine system for console anyway, and obviously on PC it's been around for a little bit longer. But this is one where it allows you to go 55 kilometers an hour as standard, or you can boost up using your engine to go to 70 kilometers an hour, I believe. But obviously you do sacrifice a lot of the statistics when you boost up to that speed. Obviously they then return to normal when you come out of that mode, but certainly it gives you a bit more versatility, and you can use that on maps that maybe are slightly bigger and could really rely on having some mobility or extra mobility to be able to get around the battlefield, and that's what the CS63 offers. Allows you to be more kind of mobile and make more decisions, flexible on the maps, and that's not what's offered by a lot of the other medium tanks in the form of like the 430U. So obviously you've got a lot more mobility and the option to go to a different place on the map very, very quickly, and so, you know, it keeps your opponents guessing. And if you put out the good DPM that this thing has, 8.5 second reload, 390 alpha damage, really, really nice. And I think, you know, although the armour is basically pennable by everything that it's going to meet, even in the turret, is quite easy to pen. Definitely don't want to side scrape in this thing because it doesn't have side armour, to be honest. But yeah, I think if you want to pick up this tank, it's definitely one that I'd recommend. As a first time medium tank, probably not, but it's one that I would recommend slowly after. Maybe pick up the FE4202 first, give that a whirl, and if you like that, then you'll probably like the CS63. So that is the 5 tanks that we've picked. Obviously we'll go through a couple of honourable mentions. We've got the UDES 1516, that's actually a really good tank, and if you know how to use the siege mode mechanic, it can be really, really good. It's got super amounts of armour on the turret. I just got to hide that lower plate that it does have, because that's kind of the weak point of the tank. Really, really, really good, and certainly a tank that, for those of you more experienced players, or someone trying to get kind of more comfortable in playing with some more diverse mediums than the standard ones I've shown here, then this is a great tank for you to play. Obviously we have a few Russian ones that are kind of good. We've got the T62A, which got the DPM buff, which actually makes it a lot better now. So the DPM is just so high on it that, you know, if you want to play a super high DPM medium tank, then the T62A is one for you. Obviously the 140 isn't as good as it used to be comparatively to the T62A, but it's, you know, it's a toss-up now between which one you want to play. It's just kind of personal preference. Yeah, I think that is pretty much all of the medium tanks that can really be said about. Like, when you're looking at the Chinese mediums, they're not particularly amazing. Looking at the 121, it's kind of this heavily armoured medium tank that just doesn't seem to work, and if you wanted to play it, you'd be better off playing the 430U. It's just better in pretty much every way. STB1, not so good anymore. Used to have a super high DPM, but not the case, and certainly a tank that kind of got a little bit left behind with regards to how it plays. It's got that siege mode mechanic, a bit like the UDES does, but it doesn't really work as well as it used to, and I think that it's not that competitive and certainly wouldn't be in the top 5. Other than that, I hope you guys did enjoy this top 5 video. If you would have made any changes, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below, and also subscribe if you want to see more of this content. I do it for both World of Tanks console, and hopefully it kind of is a little bit relevant to PC as well, because the armor models and the values are very similar, if not the same on most of these tanks. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Videos should be on screen right now that you can click if you want to see some more, but once again, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.